Imagine this. After about 11 years, things started getting old, okay? I did a design and construction supervision on the Harmony House, which is a project you see there, the renovation. And just about the time I was ready to give my dissertation, Dr. McCoskey and I were sitting in his office, and he goes, Bob, I don't want you to finish this. I'm going, what are you talking about, Dr. McCoskey? He goes, no, Bob, I don't want you to finish this. I want the kids to finish it. I want the students to finish it. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, because really what he was saying was that don't do something static. Education is dynamic. School should be dynamic. It should be hands-on. Students should be involved. They should have ownership. They should be engaged. Don't do a cells and bells rectangular school, sit students in rows and expect them to learn anything. That's the Industrial Revolution. That's over. Kids today learn collaboratively. They are the text message generation. They can talk to anybody all over the world. We all have cell phones. This is all an ongoing evolution of what education should be. But in let me think what it was, add 9 to that, 89, 90, Dr. McCoskey was telling me, Bob, don't finish it. Let the kids finish it. So we did. Now, the basic premise here, and I'm sure Dr. Singer and all the educators in the room understand this, when Dr. Stevenson said schools are expensive and they last a long time, who doesn't know that? They're major investments. And again, I'm not here today to talk about the facility side of this, but I am here to share with you, and Chad and others have seen a couple of slides. I put a whole lot more into this presentation than we did the last time. But this is from my friend David Orr's book. How many of you read anything by David Orr, The Nature of Design? One of my real heroes, a great mentor in terms of education, what it means to the built environment, and so on. We need to prepare citizens for the 21st century. That's our job. And I'm here to say that I have yet to find a high school senior in this country, and I run into a lot of them, who graduated 18 and know anything about the built environment. And yet that's where we spend 80% of our time. Now, if we look at this and what we should be preparing our students for, and I'm not going to read slides to you. Hopefully you can see the slide, you can read it yourself, okay? But there's some realizations here that struck home with me a couple of Greenfield conferences ago in Chicago, where the CEO of United Technologies stood up and addressed 3,500 people. And he said, if a child enters kindergarten today, now this is a couple of years ago, but if he enters kindergarten, he or she enters kindergarten today, and are fortunate enough to have a K through 16 experience, a third of the jobs that are existing when they enter kindergarten won't exist when they graduate from college. They'll be gone. A third of the jobs will be gone, which speaks to Dr. McCoskey, rest his soul, his issue with education being static. Of the third of the jobs that will replace those when the child walks out of college 16 years later, half of those will be green jobs, mainstream green jobs. The movement's not going away. It's critical, and we need to do something about it. So my basic premise here, speaking with you today, is what are we doing in our schools in Kansas or anywhere? Not just Kansas's needs, universal needs. What are we doing to prepare children today to walk into a world that will be laced, embellished, enriched with green-collar jobs? And you can read into that energy independence, all the good comments that Dr. Singh was talking about in terms of energy independence and systems and efficiencies and things that are at the core of the facilities will be things these children will have to know, or they will be falling behind the rest of the students around the world. And I can give you chapter and verse on where this is going on, who are studying these very things I'm talking about right now with you today. They're already doing it. And they are our children's competition. That's who they are, and they're out there. So, what are we doing in our schools in Kansas and elsewhere to deal with built environmental education? I'm looking for a world a high school senior can graduate and read a utility bill. I'm looking for the world a high school senior can graduate and understand where his taxes are going with regard to infrastructure and the decisions this country is making. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, clearly, as was alluded to, the major issue with a lot of school districts, and it's only fair to say, and it's only right, and it makes sense, that most people are concerned about energy. Interesting, again, don't believe Bob, read, educate yourself. At this point in time, McGraw-Hill's findings say that half the school districts in America are interested in green schools, mostly because they save money. Half think they're not worth it and can't afford to do it. The other half really can't afford not to do it. And we're at a very, very interesting crossroads here. But we're not talking about, I believe, what we should be talking about in addition to that. In addition to that, what else can we get out of the investment in high-performance green schools? Sherry's advocacy, Chad's advocacy, Dr. Singer, everybody else going on here, Ryan and people who are going to be talking about planning for the future and what our curriculum should say. I believe you don't have a high-performance green school unless you have these three things combined: community, facility, and curriculum. Once more, with all due respect, the facility is the easy part. It's no longer a matter of finding low VOC paint or recycled content brick or energy-efficient mechanical systems. The room's full of people who do exactly that. We know how to do that. What are the community connections? And for crying out loud, what are we doing with our facilities that we are investing hundreds of millions of dollars in with respect to their potential for enriching the educational delivery process? Could we start with the children instead of a utility bill if we're going to value why we do these things to begin with? We need to talk about both, I know. But what I want to do with you this morning is talk about kids, because I think it's important. Okay. Now, mindsets, process, tools. The only thing that's important here is my friend Al on the right talking about we have to think about this spherically. We can't do it in a linear process. We have to think about it spherically. And I dare say, and I have great respect for teachers, staff, and administrators, because I think we are really, really good at spinning the plates. We know how to balance things. We juggle all the time. We got all these things in our mind. We know how to do this. I give everyone in education in that regard the benefit of the doubt. But what happens when the built environment concerns of utility and taxes and millage are looked at through the lens of education and curriculum and child development and safety and nurturing and education and SAT scores and so on and so forth? What happens then? Now, obviously, we could talk about this for days, and we do, and we write to this. We have articles about this, and this is a huge, huge part of the Green School movement. I have to pause for a moment and reflect on what Sherry said. I have, in fact, chaired Lead for Schools now for the last 6 years, and I was fortunate enough to sponsor the Schools at Teaching Tool credit. They gave me that when they gave me Mold, so I got to be known as Mr. Mold and Professor Bob in the Lead for Schools movement. Now, Schools at Teaching Tool was pushed back on pretty hard. I wanted 300 contact hours a year. They gave me 10. Not too hard to do in the overall academic years. Talk to a child for 10 hours about something over the course of the year. But it struck me that really what this comes down to is what are we doing with the information that we can gather from these facilities. And here I'm going to build on what Dr. Singer said, because I believe strongly in what he's doing and how he's doing it. But I want to make this comparison, and that is I think we need to think about when we're planning schools and we're talking about how the money sloshes around. You know, my friend Hazel Henderson, an author, says $1 trillion a day sloshes around the world electronically. How it sloshes makes all the difference. And when we talk about price, cost, and value in schools and other things, we have to look at what we're buying and why we're buying it, but we have to be able to see how many different ways we can get a return on the investment that we're making in schools. Now, I know our friends from Train understand this because we have, again, going back on the fact that we have the technology that at once can monitor, measure, save energy, operate our schools, all the things that turn the lights off, non-emotion sensors and things that Dr. Singer referring to, all these things are critically important. Now, how do we teach with them? It's not enough to build the school. We're not building schools to warehouse kids. We're building schools to educate kids. And we need to know what part of the community, the facility, the buildings, and the site can be used cost effectively. I am a taxpayer. I want my money's worth from the school I build. A beautiful school with a LEED plaque on the wall is simply not enough. And oh, by the way, and I get this all the time as I put my architect's hat back on, if a school has light shelves, it's not a teaching school. If a school has a door that's glass and you can look in and see the mechanical equipment, it's not a teaching school. If the school has a flagpole out front that casts a shadow on the sidewalk and someone was smart enough to mark where the solstices are, very good idea, it's not a teaching school. Unless all these things are wrapped into the environment, I'm going to give you some great examples of how it's not a teaching school. Great school, LEED plaque, energy efficient, thank goodness, that's great. But why did you build it if you're not using it to teach?